Hello and welcome. This is Sadusman. In today's video, I'm going to share with you custom calculations inside of pivot tables. There are a lot of custom calculations that are available. We have to first go through the data, and then we will go inside of each of these calculations one by one. The data that we have is in the data sheet, in which we have got almost approximately 15,000 rows of data, and we have been using this specific data for our earlier videos on pivot table as well. In case of custom calculations, let's go into individual sheet and discuss there. In this sheet, we have two pivot tables. One pivot table has some calculations side of it, and another pivot table is just raw data of sales. The calculation that we have in this pivot table in the first one is that each sales value for each of the product category across each of the regions is shown as a percentage of the total sales, and the year we have filtered is 2014. We can change the year from the filter. Let's say if we go to 2012, the percentages will be updated for the 2012 year. In case of 2014, as we have selected earlier, the total sales of all these product categories across all these regions is taken as 100%, and individual sales of these product categories calculated based on the total products sales of all the categories. So if you want to replicate this calculation inside of the pivot table given below, we have made a simple pivot table in which we have taken product categories in the rows area and regions in the columns area. Years we have taken in the filters area. Now we want to show these sales as a percentage of the total, the grand total. In this case, I'm going to click on this sum of sales, click on value field settings, and in case you can see the summarized values are sum by default, but we don't want to go into this. We want to go into the another tab that is called show value as. So we will click on this show values as, and this you can see that there is no calculation being performed right now, which is a default behavior of pivot table. If we drop down this arrow, the first thing that we see is the percentage of grand total. Let's click this option and then click OK. You will see that the sales values have been converted into individual percentages, and the individual percentages are being calculated based on the individual sales divided by the total sales of all product categories across all regions for the year 2014. So this is the first calculations which is built in. Let's go to the another one. In this sheet we have again two pivot tables, and now the sales values are shown by each month for the year 2014 from Jan to December, and the sales values are shown in absolute terms as well as the sales values are shown as percentages across each of the months from January to December. Since the dates or the months are in the column, so we have taken the percentages based on the column total 17 million, which means the 7.21% is coming from dividing 1,227,000 by 17.031 million. If you want to replicate this calculation in this pivot table, we will click on this first, and then we already have some of sales values here. We can add another field from the fields into the value section. So we have a duplicate of this column, and now we will perform this calculation on this one. We will click on this, click on value field settings, go to show values as, and from the no calculation we will change it to the percentage of column total. And when we click OK, we see the total of 100%, 17 million represents 100%, and each of these figures represent a percentage of on the total 17 million. Again, as we saw earlier, we can change the year and the percentages will be updated automatically. Let's go to the third example. In this third example, we have the same pivot table, but as we saw in the percentage of grand total sheet, but we have this in the for each of these months for the year 2014. And in the top pivot table, you can see that in the previous case, in the previous sheet, we saw the percentages in the column. Now in this case, we have percentages in the row section. So in the below pivot table, we have sales values. So let's do the calculation over here. We will click on sum of sales again, value field settings, show values as you already know that we are going to go here, and then percentage of row total. This will calculate each of the sales values as a percentage of the row total. The total of all the months across each product category is 100%. So the audio sales total for 2014 is 100%, and individual month sale is taken as a percentage of the total sales for that year for that product category. So this is the percentage of row total calculation which is built in pivot tables. Let's go to the next one, that's called percentage off. In this sheet we can see that we have the same pivot table as we saw earlier in the previous example, but in this case what we want to do is we don't want to calculate the percentages based on the total of the year or the grand total. What we want to do is we can see that the total sales of across each product category, the category of computers is the highest. The total sales of the computer category is 7 million, which is the biggest share in the total sales of 17 million for the year 2014. So what I want to do is I want to calculate the sales of individual product categories for individual months as a percentage of the computer sales for that month. Like this, in this case the computers sales is taken as 100%. Cameras and camcorders sales is 45% of the computer sales, which can be seen from here. If we divide 258,000 with from 566,000, we'll get 45.67%. So in this case what we are going to do, we will first show field list, and in this case we will click on sum of sales and then value field settings and show values as. From no calculation we change it to percentage off. In this case I have the two bottom fields activated, in which base field is available and base items we can select from each of the base field. So in this case, in this pivot table I have product categories already available, so I will the system has the pivot table has already chosen product category for me as the base field, and in this case I can select any of categories or any of the product categories to base my calculations on. I can either select any one of the categories, or in this case if I want to just select previous, it will just calculate the percentages based on the previous product category, whatever that might be. So in case of cameras and camcorders it will be computers, in case of TV and video it can be cameras and camcorders and so on. So the previous product category will be taken as a basis for the calculation, but in this case we want to calculate the sales percentages based on the computers category, so we'll select computers and we'll click OK. In this case you can see the 100% is the computers line for each of these months, and all the others are shown as a percentage of computers. The smallest category is the music, movies and audiobooks, which is only 3.79% of the computer sales. When we go to the next, let's go to the next example, percentage of parent row. In this case let's understand the construction of the pivot table first. What I have in the pivot table are two fields in the row section, the product category and the product subcategory. So we can see that the audio product category has got three subcategories: Bluetooth headphones, MP4 and MP3, and recording pen. And similarly all the other product categories have their own product subcategories. In columns I have a region. In case of region I have Asia, Europe and North America, these three regions. And what I want to do is I want to calculate the percentage. If you see, for example, in audio, if I sum the sales of these three product subcategories, I get 100% at the bottom, which means that out of this product the category audio, these three subcategories will constitute 100%, which means each of these subcategory sales based on the total product category sales of audio. So I will calculate this basically by dividing the sales of Bluetooth headphones by the total audio product category sales. Similarly, in case of cameras and camcorders, the camcorders sales represents 46% of the sales of the total camcorders group, which means that 780 divided by 1.386 will give me 46%. Similarly, in case of cell phones, the cell phone accessories, which is 222186 divided by total 604599 will give me 36%. So in each of these regions, in each of these product categories, what I want is I want to calculate the sales of each of the product subcategory as a percentage of its parent product category. So in this case, let's do the calculation on the other pivot table. In this other pivot table, I only have sales values, product category, product subcategory for the year 2014, and across each of these three regions. So I want to add another field from the sales, from the field list, sales again. And in case of sales 2, what I want to do, I would like to calculate the percentage of parent row. From no calculation, I will select percentage of parent row total and I will click OK. So you'll see that the parent row is audio, in case of product subcategory, Bluetooth headphones, MP4, MP3 and recording pen, and in case of these four, the parent row is cameras and camcorders. So we get the percentages of each of these product subcategories. The interesting thing to note here is that in case of product category audio, the total is 2.19. What does this 2.19 represent? Let's see. If I collapse this product subcategories, the entire product subcategories, and we'll see the individual of the total of the product categories. So in this case, you can see that this 2.19 represents the sale of audio over the total sales across all product categories, which will becomes a parent of the individual product category. So if we want to expand the field, the individual percentages will give me the percentages of each of the product subcategory sales over the product category sales, whereas the subtotal will give me the percentage of product category over the total sales of all product categories. So this becomes the grand total, becomes the parent row for each of the product categories. Let's go to the next example. In this example, we have the calculation, but just in not in case of row, but in case of column. So we have a hierarchy in columns, in which I have let's see the field list first. We have a hierarchy in columns that the product category is on top, and then the region comes below the product category. And in rows, we have only manufacturers. I have filtered a list manufacturers from the list. I'm not taking all of them. I'm taking just some of them. In case of this pivot table, we have 8 Corporation as a manufacturer. If we combine the sales of 8 Corporation, we get 100% of sales for cameras and camcorders broken into the regions Europe and North America. So Europe sales is 25.87% of the total 8 Corporation sales for the category of cameras and camcorders. Let's say in case of Contoso, we have sales both in cameras and camcorders as well as computers. So if I click on this number, the total sales breakup of cameras and camcorders for Contoso is 20% in 21% in Europe and 79% in North America. Whereas in case of computers, the sales breakup is 23% approximately in Europe and 77% in North America. So in this case, we have calculated the percentages based on the parent column total. So in this case, we have sales only in the below pivot table. We will add percentages here. Click on sum of sales, value field settings, show values as, drop down of and from drop down we'll select the parent column total and click OK. So we get the same percentages, not the same percentages. Let's see what's the difference. Okay, in the top category I have also filtered the regions, so let's filter the regions here as well. We don't want Asia, for instance. If I want to filter only Europe and North America, now the percentages are exactly the same, right? So and again in product categories, we have only cameras and computers. So let's filter cameras and computers and no TV and audio. Now we have got exactly the same pivot table as above. Going to the next example, percentage of parent total. In this case, you can see that we have a pivot table in which we have got sales values for each of these product categories, and then we have a product subcategories, then we have regions, and under the regions we also have countries. So let's expand this, expand entire field, and let's see we have countries across under each regions. In this case, the sales values are shown as a percentage of the Bluetooth headphones product subcategory. The percentages are shown as a total of product subcategory, each of the product subcategory. Each of the product subcategory is 100%. Let's say Bluetooth headphones is 100%, MP4, MP3 is 100%, and we have breakdown across each of the regions. So the total sales of audio in case of Bluetooth headphones subcategory is 20% is in Asia, 17.9% is in Europe, and 61% is in North America. And within that 20.67%, the Asia breakup is this. So if we would like to sum the Asia breakup, we will get the 20.67% across all these countries. In case of Pakistan, for example, the sales are only 1.71%. Okay, let's construct the same pivot table. We can change the basis. In this case, the basis is a product subcategory. We can change the basis to regions, and the basis can be changed to product category as well. Let's see how it's done. In this pivot table, we only have sales, and we have constructed the same pivot table but with sales only. So let's add the sales field again. In this case, I'm going to click on value field settings, show values as, and now percentage of parent total. And in this case, we can select what the basis on our own choice. In this case, the basis right now is product subcategory. Let's click on product subcategory, and then you can see where we have the same pivot table as before, like on the left one. So each of these sales are shown as a percentage of the subcategory sales. Let's say if I just select one subcategory to show. So in this case, the total, we have got 3 subcategories, and each of the subcategories sales are 100%. If I change this to, let's say, the product category from audio to, let's say, cameras and camcorders, you will see that the 100% is still there on each product subcategory level. For camcorders, the breakdown is 30%, 16%, and 53% between the three regions of Asia, Europe, and North America. So you can set your subtotals, your percentages based on any level of hierarchy in the pivot table. Now let's move on to the next example. We have a pivot table of difference from. In this case, we have a simple pivot table. Let me filter only Asia to make it a bit shorter. Let's say in Asia we have got various countries, and we've got sales for 2012, 13, and 14. What I would like to see is the difference of sales versus last year. Since there is no history before 2012, the difference versus last year is nil in case of 2012, but in case of 2013 you can see that the difference from 77,473 versus 27,068 is 50,405. Similarly, the sales dropped in Armenia from 2013 to 2014, and the sales difference is negative. So this is how we can calculate the difference of sales from one period to another period. And let's do this in the new pivot table. In this pivot table, we only have sales values, and we will add one column here. We will add one more field, sales again. I will click on value field settings, and then I will click on show values as. I will select difference from. When I select this difference from the drop down list, my base field and base items become activated. In the base field, I can select, since in my pivot table I have countries and regions in my in rows and years and columns, so I can select any of these fields to take difference from. If I want to calculate difference from year over year, then I will have to select the years in the base field. When I select year, I can either take the difference from any particular year, let's say every year versus 2012. In this case, I will have to select 2012 from this list, from the base item. In other case, I can just take a difference from the previous years. In this current scenario, I'm going to select the previous, and here I can get the sales of each year versus the previous year, just like we did in the target pivot table. So this is how we can calculate sales values differences from year over year for each of these countries and regions. In the next example, we are going to take the same approach, but now this time we are going to calculate difference in terms of percentages. The same pivot table, just like we saw a while ago, but this time we are going to add percentage differences from last year. So I'm going to drag the sales field again in the value section. I will click on value field settings, difference, percentage difference from, and in case of base field, I'm going to select years, and I will select previous to get the last year. And in terms of percentages, you can see that the sales growth, let's say in case of Pakistan, the sales were down by 11% in 2013, but they were 52% higher in 2014, and so on. So this is another example. In next example we are going to discuss running totals. So let's click here. In this case, what we have got a pivot table in for sales of each of these three regions for each of these months, and we can select a particular year. Let's say we can select 2014 as we did before. For 2014, the month-wise sales are appearing in this first three columns, and in the next three columns we have the running total for each month. So this is the so-called year-to-date sale. The sales value of 350 is the same in January, but in case of February, the cumulative sales of January and February are shown here, and same goes for each of these months. So in the last month, December, the total sales for the year are shown in the as a cumulative value. So in this case we are going to create the same cumulative totals in our new pivot table. I'm going to drag sales field again, and in this case value field settings, show values as, running total in, and running total in I want to calculate running total based on the order date. The field order date is in my rows, so I will click OK, and there you see the running totals are appearing. In this case we can see the sales are the month-wise sales and the running totals are appearing side by side. If we want to change the sequence here, we can just click the drag regions below, and then you can see that the month-wise sales are here and the cumulative sales are shown here. We can change the sequence in the columns as well by dragging the fields up or down. In the next example we are going to perform the same logic, but in this case the running total percentages. You can see that the sales same pivot table is here, but now in this case we are going to get a percentage cumulative total. So again I'm going to drag the sales field, click on value field settings, show values as. From the drop down I'm going to select the percentage running total in. Order date is OK, and click OK, and I will just drag a region below. There we can see the percentage 100%. In the first month the 6% sales were completed. Let's say by June the sales were 46% of the total. So we can see simply that in Asia the bulk of the sales are made in the second half of the year, whereas in case of Europe the bulk sales are made in the first part. So this is also providing some useful information. Let's go to the next example. In this case we are going to rank from smallest to largest. We have a pivot table here in which we have sales across regions for each of the manufacturers, and we are going to rank the manufacturer by the sales values. The one which has the lowest sales value, which is Northwind Traders, will be given a ranking of 1, and the highest sales value, which is Fabricam, will be given a ranking of 10, or the highest value. So this is ascending order, which means lowest to highest. So I'm going to apply this on this pivot table. I will drag the sales field again. I can click on value field settings, show values as, and from the drop down list I'm going to go to the rank smallest to largest, and in case of base field we have manufacturers, fine, and I click OK, and there you see Northwind Traders is 1, and whereas Fabricam is 10. So we can either leave it like this, or we can rearrange the columns as we did before by dragging the region field and below, and there we have the rankings all at one place. In the next example we are going to do the reverse, which means that rankings based on the largest to smallest. We have countries and sales by country, and for each of these countries we can get the sales values in the descending order. The country with the highest sales will be given the rank number 1, and so on. Right, so we have sales years in the columns and countries in rows. So we are going to calculate the ranks based on the highest to lowest. We'll click on value field settings, go to show values as, no calculations, change to, let's say, largest to smallest, and the base is country, which is OK, and there you see, and we will rearrange the columns. So, and then we can also sort that. We can sort this sum of sales to, and we'll go to the highest rank sales are on the top. So this is the United States is tops the list with the highest sales, followed by China and then Germany and so on. last example in this pivot table custom calculations video is the index function inside of pivot tables. In the first pivot table we have sales values for each product category across each of the regions. The index function basically calculates the relative importance of each of the figures inside of the pivot table relative to its rows and columns. Let's first calculate index and then I can explain how it's calculated. So in the next pivot table we are going to use the same value sales and go to value field settings, show values as, and from the no calculation I'll go to the bottom and choose index, and I'll do the number formatting as well. In this you can see that there are certain index values for each of the values appearing in the pivot table. The basis of calculation is that I will first take the product of this value with the grand total, and then I will take the product of the total of the columns with the total of the rows, and then I will divide the first value by the second, so I get the same 0.906, which is the index value of Asia and audio. Similarly, if I want to make another calculation, let's do it for computers in North America. Computers multiply by grand total, and then total of the column multiply by the total of the row, and first value divided by the second value, we get an index of 1.038 or 039. So this is the value of computers in North America. So this is how index is calculated, which shows the relative importance of each figure inside a pivot table relative to its rows and columns. So these are the various custom calculations in pivot tables. This has been a long video, but I hope you must have learned something here. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.